Hello, my name is Matthew, and I just read The Adventure of the Dancing Men by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and this is a part of my read along series and book club with Steve Donahue. We're reading murder mysteries in the month of March, and we're reading all of the Sherlock Holmes short stories. And I just finished The Adventure of the Dancing Men. And I swear these stories are getting better and stronger and more confident and dynamic, uh, adventurous in uh, very satisfying ways. I was thinking about the first time I had read through these short stories in my early 20s, over a decade ago. And I really remember, even even though I read them just about as quickly as I'm reading them now, just because I can't help myself, it's so hard to do. They all kind of blur together. But I do remember um, the second leg of the short stories being just incredibly strong. This is confirming my recollections. There are some issues, but it reminds me of a typical idea that the second season of a show, a sitcom or drama, if it's a good show, the second season is often much better, even if the first season was good. And I think about two of my favorite television shows, The Andy Griffith Show and Frasier. Both outstanding shows, have huge runs of seasons that are just spectacular. In both shows, the Andy Griffith Show, the second season is markedly better. And I believe that um, the actors have more confidence. They've learned the characters. The characters have settled into themselves. Any of that kind of wavering has gone away. There's a much better understanding of the setting and the tone. The producers or the writers of the show, that directorial um, overall sense of the show gets fine tuned. And after Sherlock's death, it does seem like um, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, however begrudgingly it might have been, just now has such a firm grasp on these characters, the structure in which these stories are going to be told. They're all extremely formulaic. We're going to have Sherlock and Watson in a room. Someone runs in the room, tells the story. Sherlock figures it out. And just in the past two stories, the last one was the Norwood Builder, the adventure of the Norwood Builder. And this one, we had that same structure with additional dramatic elements or developments. And the the one minor nitpicky issue before I get on to the things that I like about this short story, um, I believe it's the third time that we've had nearly the same storyline in some ways, in the sense of the premise of the short story. Again, we have a noble Englishman who hastily marries an American girl who has a suspicious and mysterious past that comes back to haunt her and um, creates havoc in everybody's life and um, inserts um, danger and intrigue. But it's that American woman, and it almost comes off as a stereotype. Um, the way that like movies in the 90s or the 2000s, if they wanted to have a villain, the villain would have some sort of foggy Eastern European accent, and it just signified um, the sneaky, conniving, villainous character. And the stereotype in this is like the loose, mysterious American woman who's marrying all of these noble Englishmen, ruining their lives. So, although that is a nitpick, I do think with that premise, this one is the strongest conception and execution of that premise. We also get a repeat of Sherlock's abilities to read minds, um, which is wonderful and ludicrous. This revision, the retelling of his mind reading abilities, um, does come off a little less satisfying, and Sherlock comes off much more pompous. The first time he's talking about the Edgar Allan Poe story, and we get literary references. It's still very magical and unbelievable, but it's a nod towards Edgar Allan Poe. In this story, it's just a nod towards Sherlock Holmes, and he's the one directing the nodding. Um, and it was Watson uh, sitting there idly in the room, just like the first scene, and Sherlock, um, out of the blue, saying, I can tell that you're not going to invest in those South African or South American trades, or something like that. Watson, of course, goes, Dear Lord, man, how could you possibly? And Sherlock, in one of his most extremely pompous uh, episodes, just says, I want you to write it down that it's so unbelievable. Because when I explain it to you, you're going to be shocked by how simple it is. So maybe we should have a challenge where you write it down, document. It doesn't seem that happens. And then Sherlock goes on the same fantastical, supernatural, uh, unrealistic, unbelievable line of reasoning to come to the conclusion that he didn't invest in whatever. His thumb had an indentation. That meant that the night before he was playing pool with the person 4 weeks ago that mentioned this investment, and he had come home, and the checkbook is locked in Sherlock's dresser, and if he did decide to invest, he would have had to have gone to Sherlock with the key, and since he didn't invest, and he saw the friend, and they talked about it, clearly he decided against it. And then Watson agrees with him. Goes, oh yeah, I guess that sounds simple. Easy enough. So that's our little moment. Or a little bit of chemistry between the two. Definitely is fun. Um, but it's a rehashing, and that part maybe not quite as good. So we have, I can't even remember the guy's name, but again, someone runs into the apartment and starts telling his story. He recently married an American woman, maybe 3 years ago. They met and got married in the span of a month. The woman, the wife, said, I have a storied past. I want to keep it to myself. Make a promise to me that you will never ask about my past. If you want to fall in love and have a life with someone that you know their whole life, I'm not the person for you. He's in love. He assures Sherlock and Watson, if you met her, you would agree. Time goes by, year two goes by, and they find this another advancement. So we have the idea that the dramatic structure can become more exciting. Um, the characters can be more confident. The storytelling can be more confident. We also have what I believe is the first time of illustrations or typographical embellishments being introduced into the printed page. And so I'll show these dancing men, and this is the beginning of the mystery, the case, the adventure. Is the husband, the alarmed husband that's telling the story, finds these symbols. They look like childish dancing men written on the window pane in chalk, and he just wipes it off. He mentions it to his wife. She turns ashen, skin's like chalk. Next day or day or two, on the sundial, he sees the same dancing men. He shows it to his wife, and she is just beside herself in panic. And we have a couple of these episodes that result in this person being so concerned because he loves his wife. He also wants to keep his promise. He doesn't want to force it out of her, what the mystery is. He does believe that he should take matters in his own hand to try to figure out what's going on and how to relieve this anxiety, and that's why he's visiting Sherlock. And we see the dancing men. I showed it, but and there's only one line that Sherlock gets at first. Sherlock is intrigued in the case, doesn't bother to leave the apartment, just says, "Go home. If you get any more messages, let me know." He gets another correspondence with the harried husband. There's more messages. Even an encounter. He sees there's a person on his property sneaking around, going to write messages. Approaches him with a pistol. The wife drags him away, bounds him up, and the person not only escapes but manages to stay on the property to write more messages, telling all this to Sherlock. Again, Sherlock says, "Well, I'll leave the codes that you gave me. I'll come by tomorrow or later." Then, at this point, everything is still following nearly every Sherlock structural story. It's following the structure of these stories. But like the Norwood Builder, where there really is a twist in the dramatic turn of the story, in the Norwood Builder, we had a man's life that was hanging in the balance. If Sherlock couldn't figure it out, an innocent man in the story, presently in action, could be sentenced to death. In this story, it comes to light. The man that was so worried about his wife, that had come to Sherlock twice, he's shot dead. The wife has also been shot in the head and is still alive. So this isn't a case without consequences. This is Sherlock being brought an interesting, mysterious case that needs to be solved. Doesn't bother to leave, doesn't have to leave his apartment, will just tut people off until they can bring him more information. And as a result, we have these fatal effects. Sherlock is now there not just to solve the case, but to bring justice to the man that came and asked for his help. And that dramatic turn makes the story so much more invigorating. The moment it happens, you become just enwrapped, uh, completely pulled into the story. You really want to know. And like the Norwood Builder, we also get a sense that there's a little bit of detective work that we can do as the reader. There's things that we know and clues that we know that can possibly um, lead us to conclusions, not lead us to solving the mystery, but different lines of thought that the story might go in a fairly reasonable um, way. We also then get something that I remember, I believe it was The Gold Bug by Edgar Allan Poe, where we have code breaking and ciphering and puzzles. And it comes back to these dancing men, which is a code. It turns out that it's um, a relationship that the American woman had with a Chicago mobster who's now in England, and they both had a code that they used, and that's this code. And in a really realistic way, a little fancifulness, but pretty accurate, it seems, we get a sequence of uh, Sherlock breaking the code, getting new evidence, looking at it, figuring certain things out, using his Sherlockian brain. Uh, Again, we also get Sherlock's reputation. He comes into this county that he isn't familiar with. There's an inspector there that just knows his name. It's not Lestrade. It's just some inspector, but knows him by reputation. And there's no friction. We just have this inspector that says, like, I would be proud to work with you. Can I just be around you while you're working? Very little outrageousness, very little eccentricity, just um, Sherlock being serious and focused, um, and acting in a in a manner of gravity to solve the case. And in this inspector that knows him by reputation and allows him to do what Sherlock does best. And there's a really satisfying crime scene or crime scene set piece where we see the bodies, or we see the one body that's still there. The woman that was alive was taken to get medical treatment. There was one gun, two bullets. There's still two bullets in a cartridge that only holds four. All the bullets are accounted for, and Sherlock points out that the windowsill has a bullet that goes through it. He goes, well, what about that bullet? And the inspector goes, how did you notice that bullet? And Sherlock goes, well, I was looking for it. And goes on this explanation, and without spoiling much, and really you can't spoil these stories. Um, we know who the culprit is, and the inspector says, well, how are we going to find the culprit? And Sherlock says, well, he'll be here any moment. And again, we get that moment where um, everyone goes, dear God, man, what are you talking about? He goes, well, I invited him. And again, it has just like that bow on a present wrap up. The codes that we had gone through. This is the person that's using these codes. There's only one person that uses these codes. It's the woman that he is in communication with, that he had been frightening, the mysterious American woman. Sherlock broke the code and sent him a message in that code. He would, of course, think she's the only one that knows it, and safely walk right in the door and promptly get arrested by these local county inspectors. It's great. So, even more now than at the beginning of this thing, I'm excited. I thought making all these videos was going to be a challenge, but I'm loving it. And I have every reason to believe that the short stories, for at least a long run, are going to be just as good, even with minor quibbles, and just like any series of short stories or television show. There's highs and lows, and little things that maybe could be fixed around, but it's the Sherlock. It's the short stories of Sherlock Holmes, so they're all great. So if you've read The Adventure of the Dancing Men, please let me know. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment if you would like, and take care. Bye.